time to retire this board. Maybe. Yeah. This one's a little better. There once was a young man named Roland Pide who played the recorder when he wasn't baking bagels. One day he was walking through a park and playing his pipe to rest a while from all his baking, when suddenly he spied a corpse lying on the ground beneath a swarm of flies. He put his recorder down, walked over to the corpse, shooed the flies away, and covered the dead man with stones. Returning to his oven later that day, he found that his oven blade had gone on baking by itself and already baked half the bagels he needed to bake. From that day on, Roland Pide was the happiest baker alive. He would bake until he was tired, then he'd pull his recorder out of his pocket while his oven blade went on by itself. But Roland Pide lived in a town whose mayor did not admire his skill and was jealous of his fame. So the mayor devised a plan to rid the town of Roland. In the beginning, he said that Roland was a good worker but lazy. Next, he said that Roland baked a whole lot but badly. Then he accused Roland of being a sorcerer, and the people turned on him. So Roland therefore took his recorder and left his home behind. When he came to a neighboring town, he went to all the business owners, but none of them would give him any work. Finally, he met an old beggar and asked him for work to keep body and mind together. "Come along with me," said the old man, "and we will share alms together." So Roland Pide and the old man started going around together and singing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, stand where your feet are. Everybody gave alms to the old man, but to Roland they said, "What is a young man like you out begging? Why don't you work for a living?" "Nobody will hire me," replied Roland Pied. That's what you think," "That's what you think. There's a king with so many hungry soldiers that he'll pay good wages to anyone willing to feed them." So Roland Pied went to the king's kitchen and took the old man whose alms he'd been sharing. The oven had never been baked in by anyone. Roland mixed the dough, rolled it into rings. Then he boiled it, dressed it in seeds, and baked it until it was golden brown. Then he tossed it into a crate to cool down. Whenever Roland wearied of baking, he would play his recorder. And once he was weary of playing his recorder, he would sing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are." Hearing the singing, a princess looked out the window. She saw Roland and fell in love with him. But she was a princess and he a baker. The king would never consent to their marriage, so they decided to run away together. They fled at night in a boat. When they were already on the high seas, Roland remembered the old man. He said to his beloved, "We must fetch the old man, since he shared alms with me. We can't go off and leave him like that." At that very moment, the old man came up behind the boat, walking on the water as though it had been dry land. Reaching the boat, he said, "We agreed to divide everything we had, and I shared everything I own. Now you have the king's daughter and must give half of her to me." At that, he gave Roland Pied a knife to cut his bride in half. Roland Pied took the knife in a trembling hand. "You are right," he said. "You are perfectly right." He was on the point of cutting his bride in two, when the old man suddenly stopped him. "Stop! I knew you were a just man. I am the dead man, mind you, whom you covered with stones. Go now, and may the two of you always be happy." The old man walked away on the waves. The boat came to an island, rich in all good things, with a princely palace awaiting the newlyweds. That was rolling pied in the oven blade. It's a new story. I'm still working on it. I'm a little bit slow. Hamlin towns in Brunswick, my famous Hanover city. The river Weser, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side. A pleasanter spot you've never spied. But when begins my ditty, almost 500 years ago, to see the townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Rats, they fought the dogs and killed the cats and bit the babies in the cradles and ate the cheeses from the vats and licked the soup from the cook's own ladles. Put open the kegs of salted sprats, made nests in the men's Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chats by drowning out their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different sharps and flats. At last the people in a body to the town hall came flocking. "'Tis clear," cried they, "our mayor is a naughty, and as for our corporation, it's shocking. Think we lie down blind with vermin, for those who tend won't determine what's best to rid us of our vermin. You hope because you're old and obese, to find it very quick growth ease. Rouse up, sirs, give your brains a racking, find the remedy we are lacking, for sure as fate will send you packing." At this, the mayor and corporation quaked at the way of consternation. An hour they sat in council. At length the mayor broke silence. "Poor Gilder, eyed my early down cell. I wish I were a mile hence. It's easy to bid one rack one's brain. I'm sure my poor head aches again. I scratched it so, but all in vain. Oh, for a trap, a trap, a trap." Just as he said this, what should hap? At the chamber door, but a gentle tap. "Bless us," cried the mayor, "what's that?" With the corporation as he sat, looking little to wondrous fat. Nor brighter were his eyes, nor moister than a too long opened oyster, save when at noon his paunch grew mutinous for a plate of turtle green and glutinous. Only a scraping of shoes on a mat, anything like the sound of a rat, makes my heart go pit-a-pat. "Come in," cried the mayor, looking bigger, and in did come the strangest figure. His long queer coat from heel to head was half yellow and half red, and he himself was tall and thin, with sharp blue eyes each like a pin, and light loose hair and swarthy skin, nor tuft of hair on cheek nor beard on chin, but lips for smile went out and in. There was no guessing his kith or kin, and nobody could enough admire this tall man in his quaint attire. Quoth one, "It's as my great-grandsire, starting up at the trump of doom's tone, had walked this way from his painted tombstone." He advanced towards the council table. "Please, your honor," said he, "I am able, by means of secret charm, to draw all the creatures living beneath the sun, and crawl or swim or fly or run, after me so as you never saw. And I chiefly use my charm on creatures that do people harm, the mole and toad and newt and viper, and people call me the Pied Piper." And here they noticed round his neck a scarf of red and yellow stripe, to match with his coat of self-same check. And that scarf's end hung a pipe, and his fingers they noticed were ever straying, as if impatient to be playing upon this pipe, as low it dangled over his vesture so old-fangled. "Yes," said he, "Pied Piper as I am, in Tartary I fred the cam, last June from his huge swarms of gnats. I ease in Asia the Nizam of a monstrous brood of vampire bats. And as for what your brain bewilders, if I rid your town of rats, will you give me 1,000 guilders?" 50,000 was the exclamation of an astonished mayor and corporation. Once more he stepped into the street. The piper stepped, smiling first a little smile, as if he knew what magic slept in his quiet pipe the while. Like a musical adept to blow his pipe, his lips he wrinkled, and green and blue his sharp eyes twinkled, like a candle flame where salt is sprinkled. And ere 3 shrill notes the pipe uttered, he heard as if an army muttered. The muttering grew to a grumbling, and the grumbling grew to a mighty rumbling, and out of the house came the rats tumbling. Great rats, small rats, lean rats, brawny rats, brown rats, black rats, grey rats, tawny rats, brave old potters, gay young friskers, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, cocking tails and pricking whiskers, families by tens and dozens, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, followed the Pied Piper for their lives. From street to street he piped advancing, and step for step they followed dancing, until they came to the river Weser, wherein all plunged and perished, save one who stout as Julius Caesar swam across and lived to carry, as he the manuscript he cherished, to Ratland home his commentary, which was, after a shrill notes up the pipe, I heard a sound as a scraping tripe, and putting apples wondrous ripe on into the cider presses gripe, and moving away at pickled up boards, and leaving a jar of conserve cupboards, and drawing the corks from train oil flasks, and breaking hoops of butter casks. And it seemed as if a voice sweeter far than by harp or by psalteries breathed, called out, "O rats, rejoice! The world has grown to a vast dry saltery. So munch on, crunch on, take your nunch on, breakfast, supper, dinner, lunch on, and just a bulky sugar punch on, already staved like a great sun shone. Gracious scarce an inch before me, just as methought its head come bore me, I found the Weser rolling over me. You should have heard the Hamlin people ring the bells as they rocked the steeple. Go, cried the mayor, get long poles, poke out the nests and block up the holes. Consult with carpenters and builders, and leave in our town not even a trace of the rats. When suddenly up the face of the piper perked in the marketplace. The first, if you please, my 1,000 guilders. 1,000 guilders. The mayor looked blue, so did the corporation too. For council dinners made rare havoc, with claret, moselle, fin de gras, pop, and half the money would replenish this sum of butter Greenwich, to pay this sum to a wondering fellow, with gypsy coat of red and yellow. Besides, quoth the mayor with a knowing wink, our business was done at the river's brink. We saw with our eyes the vermin sink. What's dead can't come to life, I think. So, friend, we're not folks to shrink from our duty of giving you something to drink, or a matter of money to put in your poke. But as for the guilders, what we spoke of them, as you all know, was in joke. Besides, their losses have made us thrifty. 1,000 guilders, come, take 50. The piper's face fell, and he cried, no trifling, I can't wait, he sighed. I promised a visit by dinner time, Baghdad, and accept the prime of the head cook's pottage, all he's rich in, for having left in the caliph's kitchen of a nest of scorpions no survivor. With him I prove no bargain driver, with you don't think I'll bait a stiver, and folks who put me in a passion may find me pipe after another fashion. How, cried the mayor, do you think I brook, being worse treated than a cook, insulted by a rival, an idle pipe and vegetables idle? Threaten us, fellow, do your worst, blow your pipe there till you burst. Once more he stepped into the street, to his lips again laid his long pipe of smooth straight cane. An airy blew 3 notes, such sweet soft notes as dispositions cunning never gave the enraptured air. There was a rustle that seemed like a bustling, a merry crowd jesting and pitching and hustling. Small feet were pattering, wooden shoes clattering, little hands clapping, little tongues chattering. Little like foals in a farmer and barley scattering, out came the children running, all the little boys and girls, with rosy cheeks and flaxen curls, and sparkling eyes and teeth like pearls, chirping and skipping around merrily after. The wonderful music was shouting and laughter. The mayor was dumb and the council stood, as if they're chained to the blocks of wood, unable to move a step or cry, to the children merrily skipping by. Could only follow with an eye, that joyous crowd of pipers back, how the mayor was on the rack, and the wretched council's bosoms beat as the piper turned from the high street to where the Weser rolled its waters, right in the way of their sons and daughters. How he returned from south to west, to Copperberg Hill his steps addressed, and after him the children pressed. Great was the joy in every breast. He never crossed the mighty top, he's forced to let the piping drop, and we shall see our children stop. When lo, they reached the mountainside, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed. The piper advanced and the children followed. When all were into the very last, the door in the mountainside shut fast. Did I say all? No one was lame. You could not say The mayor was dumb and the council stood as if they're changed in the blocks of wood, unable to move a step or cry, till the children merrily skipping by. Could only follow with an eye that joyous crowd of pipers back, and how the mayor was on the rack, and the wretched council's bosoms beat as the piper turned from the high street to where the Weser rolled its waters, right in the way of their sons and daughters. How he returned from south to west, to Copperberg Hill his steps addressed, and after him the children pressed. Great was the joy in every breast. He never crossed the mighty top, was forced to let the piping drop, and we shall see our children stop. When lo, they reached the mountainside, the wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed. The piper advanced and the children followed. When all were into the very last, the door in the mountainside shut fast. Good night they all, no one was lame, and could not dance the whole of the way. And in after years, if you'd blame his sadness, you used to say, as dull in our towns as my playmates left, I can't forget that I'm bereft of all the pleasant sights they see, which the piper also promised me. For he led us, he said, to a joyous land, joining the town in jest at hand, where waters gushed and fruit trees grew, and flowers before the fair view, and everything was strange and new. The sparrow was buried a peacock here, and our dogs outran our fellow deer, and honeybees had lost their stings, and horses were born with eagle's wings. And just as I became assured, my lame foot be speedily cured, the music stopped, and I stood still, and found myself outside the hill, left behind against my will, to go now limping as before, and never hear of that country more. Alas, alas for Hamelin, there came into many a burgher's pate a text which says that heaven's gate opes the rich at as easy rate as the needle's eye takes a camel in. The mayor sent east, west, north, and south, called for the piper by word of mouth. Wherever it was men's lot to find him, silver and gold to his heart's content, if only he'd return the way he went, and bring the children behind him. But when they saw 'twas lost endeavor, the piper and dancers were gone forever, they made a decree that lawyers never should think their records dated duly, if after the day of the month and year, these words do not as well appear. And so long after what happened here, on the 22nd of July, 1376, and a better in memory to fix, the place of the children's last retreat, they called it Pied Piper Street, where anyone playing piper tabor was sure for his future to lose his labor, nor suffered they hostler tavern, shocked with mirth the street so solemn. In opposite the place of the cavern, they wrote the story on a column, and on great church window painted, the same to make the world acquainted, how their children were stolen away, and there it stands this very day. And I must not omit to say, in Transylvania there is a tribe of alien people who ascribe the way and dress of which their neighbors lay such stress to their fathers and mothers having risen out of some subterranean prison into which they were trepanned a long time ago in a mighty band out of Hamlin towns and Brunswick land, but how or why they don't understand. So, Lily, let me and you be wipers of scores out with all men, especially pipers. And if they should pipe us free from rats or from mice, if we promise them on, let us keep our promise. My first thought was he lied in every word, that hoary cripple with malicious eye, askance to watch the working of his lie on mine, a mouth scarce able to afford suppression of the glee that pursed and scored its edge at one more victim gained thereby. What else should he be set for with his staff? What save the waylay with his lies and snare all travelers who might find him posted there? And as the road, I guessed what skull-like laugh would break, what crutch could write my epitaph for pastime in the dusty thoroughfare. If at his counsel I should turn aside into ominous track which all agree hides the dark tower, yet acquiescingly I did turn as he pointed, neither pride nor hope rekindling at the end descried, so much as gladness some end might be. For what with my whole world wide wondering, what with my search drawn out through years, my hope dwindled into a ghost not fit to cope with that obstreperous joy success would bring. I hardly tried now to rebuke the spring my heart made, finding failure in its scope. As a sick man very near to death seems dead indeed, and feels begin and end the tears, and takes a farewell of each friend, and hears one bid the other go, draw breath freely or outside, since all is over, he saith, and the blow fallen no bleeding men. While some discuss if near other graves be room enough for this, and when a day suits best for carrying the corpse away, with caribou banners, scarfs, and staves, and still the man hears and only craves, he may not shame such tender love and stay. Thus he had for so long suffered in his quest, heard failure prophesied so often writ, so many times among the band to wit, the knights who two dark towers search should rest their steps, the gist to fail as they seem best, and all doubt was now should I be fit. So quiet as despair I turned from him, that hateful cripple, out of his highway, into the path he pointed. All the day had been a dreary one at best, and dim was settling into its close. It shot one grim red beard to see the plain catch its astray. For mark, no sooner was I fairly found, pledged to the plain after a pace or two, than pausing through backward the last view, over the safe road 'twas gone, great plain all round, nothing but plain to the horizon's bound. I must go on, naught else remained to do. So on I went. I think I never saw such starved ignoble nature. Nothing throve, for flowers as well expect a cedar grove, but chortle and spurge according to their law, might propagate their kind with none to awe. You think a burr had been a treasure trove. No penury inert in a single mace, in some strange sort were the land's portion. See or close your eyes, said nature peevishly. It nothing skills, I can't help my case. 'Tis last judgment's fire must cure this place. Calcine its clods and set my prisoners free. If there pushed any ragged thistle stalk above its mates, its head was chopped. The bents were jealous else. What made the holes and rents and the docks our swarth leaves? Bruised to balk all hope of greenness. 'Tis a brute must walk, passion their life with boots and tents. As for the grass, it grew scarce as hair in leprosy. Thin dry blades pricked the mud which underneath looked kneaded up with blood. One stiff blind horse, as every bone was stare, stood stupefied however he came there, thrust out past surface from the devil's stud. Alive, he might be dead for aught I know, with red gaunt and calloused neck astrain, and shut eyes beneath the rusty mane. Seldom went such grotesqueness with such woe. I never saw a brute I hated so. He must have been wicked to deserve such pain. I shut my eyes and turned them on my heart, as a man calls for wine before he fights. I asked one draft of earlier, happier sights. Ere fit the hope to play his part. Think first, fight afterwards, a soldier's art. One taste of old times that's all to rights. Not it. I fancied Cuthbert's rending face beneath its garniture of curly gold. Dear fellow, till I almost felt him fold. An arm and mind fixed me to the place, that way he used. Alas, one night's disgrace, oh, at my heart's new fire and left it cold. Giles and the soul of honor, there he stands, frank as 10 years ago when knighted first. An honest man should dare, he said he durst. Good, but the scene shifts. Fall with England's hand pinned to his breast of parchment. His own band reads it. Poor traitor spit upon and cursed. Better this present than a past like that. Back therefore to my darkening path. No sound of sight as far as the eye can strain. Will the night send a howl or a bat, I asked, when something on the dismal flat came to arrest my thoughts and change their train. A sudden little river crossed my path, as unexpected as a serpent came. No tides congenial to the glooms. This as it frothed by might have been a bath of the fiend's glowing hoof, to see the wrath of its black eddies be spat with flakes and spumes. So petty yet so spiteful, all along low scrubby alders kneeled over it. Drenched willows flung them headlong in a fit of rout despair. A suicidal throng, the river which had done them all the wrong, whatever that was, rolled by, deterred no whit. which while I forded, good saints, how I feared to set my foot upon a dead man's cheek. Each step or field a spear I thrust to seek, hollows tangled in his hair or beard. It may have been a water rat I speared, but ugh, it sounded like a baby's shriek. Glad was I to reach other bank, now for a better country. Vain presage, who are the strugglers? What war did they wage? Whose savage trample could thus pad the dank soil to a plash? Toads in a poison tank, or wild cats in a red-hot cage. The fight must so have seemed in that foul cirque. What penned them there with all the plain to choose? No footsteps leading to that horrid muse. None out of it, mad brewage set to work their brains, no doubt. Like galley slaves a Turk pits for his pastime, Christians against Jews. And more than that, a furlong on, why there, what bad use was that engine for, that wheel, or break not wheel, that harrow fit to reel men's bodies out like silk, with all the air of Tophet's tool, on earth left unaware, or brought to sharpen his rusty teeth and steel. Then came some stub ground, once a wood, next a marsh it would seem, now mere earth, desperate and done with so the fool finds mirth, makes the thing and mars it, till his mood changes, and off he goes, within a rude ball of clay and marsh, sand and stark black dirt. Now blotches rankling colored gay and grim, now patches where some mean subsoil was broken through moss or substances like oils. Then came a palsied oak, a cleft in him, a distorted mouth that slips its grim, gaping at death in his eyes while it toils. As far as ever from the end, not in the distance but leaving not, point my footsteps further at the thought. Great black bird, Apollyon's bosom friend, sailed past or beat his wide wings dragon fan, that brushed my cap, the fancy guide I saw. For looking up aware I somehow grew, a plain and hidden place all round the mountains with such names and grace near heights and leaves now stolen a view. How thus they surprised me solving you, how to get from there was no clear case. Yet half I seemed to recognize some trick of mischief had happened to me, God knows when, in a bad dream perhaps. Here ended then progress this way, when in the very nick of giving up one more time, came a click as when the trap shuts you're in the den. Burningly it came upon me all at once, this was the place. Those two hills crouched like two bulls that come in horn and fight, while to the left a tall scalp mountain, dunce daughter to dozing at the very nunce after a lifetime of training for the sight. What in the midst lay like the tower itself, the round squat turret, blind to the fool's heart, built of brown stone without a counterpart in the whole world. The tempest's mocking owl points to the ship and thus the unseen shelf he strikes on only when timbers start. Not see, because of no caps, why day came back for that. Behind the left, the dying sunset kindled through a cleft. The hills like two giants in the hunting lay, chin upon hand to see the game at bay. No stab and end the creature to the heft. Not here, when noise was everywhere, it told, increasing like a bell, names in my ears, lost adventurers, my peers. How such was strong and such was bold, and such was fortunate, yet each of old. Lost one moment now the woe of years. There they stood, ranged along the hillside met, to view the last of me, a living frame, for one more picture in a sheet of flame. I saw them and knew them all, and yet dauntless, the slughorn to my lips I set and blew. Child rolling to a dark tower came. Bagely bagels, I want more. Bagely bagels, watch them soar. Bagely bagels, don't hit the floor. Say goodbye to the baker at the door. Bagely bagels, we want more. Bagely bagels, watch them soar. Bagely bagels, into the basket, the baker score. We love to watch our baker even more. Bagely bagels. Bagely bagels, bagely, 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 bagels galore. Bagely, 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 bagels galore. Bagels, bagels, everyone loves bagels. Bagels, bagels, won't you eat one too? Big ones, small ones, thick ones, and puffy ones, I don't know. Bagels, bagels, everyone loves bagels too.